Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Deborah Garlick from Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace, and author of the book Menopause, the Change for the Better. And today's session, I'm delighted to welcome back Nigel Denby from Harley Street at Home. And this session is entitled Finding Your Lifelong Lifestyle and Weight Management Plan. And for me, Nigel, welcome again. For me, the word lifelong is big there. And I'm just going to explain that a little bit, because last week was the Menopause Friendly Employer Awards. Now, across our team, we are so busy all the time working and things. And sometimes the weight management, the exercise can slip a bit. I know I've not been away from my desk since 8:30 this morning in back-to-back meetings. And one of the big conversations across our team when we were thinking about getting into our little black dresses, not only was I following your top tips on how not to bloat, because there was no room for that in that dress, but also when we had the team meeting at the beginning of the week on the sort of the final run through of how everything was going to work, we were all going, how do we lose half a stone for Thursday? Now, that's just not possible. So if we're going to be sensible about this, that word lifelong, we're past the days of being able to say, my holiday's coming up in a month, I need to get my bikini, I need to lose some weight, and it actually working. So quitting all of that, as you've told us so many times before, and getting more into the mindset of lifelong, being your best self every day and thinking about it in a much more longer term way. So maybe this is my way of saying, I need to get ready for next year's awards. Nigel, please help me.
Well, I'll certainly do my best, Deborah, and thank you so much for having me back again. It's always brilliant to do one of these sessions. And you're right. I mean, lifelong for me is absolutely the key word here again, for lots of different reasons. Maybe if we start with just thinking, well, why is the kind of classic yo-yo difficult and something that we really ought to be avoiding? Essentially, it's difficult because it's utterly miserable. It is just horrendous getting into that process of throwing yourself into the latest plan, the purgatory of that miserable diet, and then losing your bit of weight, because most diets will help you lose weight one way or another. They're all designed at different ways of cutting calories, so they do work. But the key bit then is it gets so miserable, you think, oh God, give me a break, I can't do this anymore. Go back to what you were doing before, regain the weight. And the problem at this stage, at the perimenopause and the menopause, is if you're losing weight rapidly, you're impacting one of the key elements of the perfect storm of menopause weight gain, that is going to mean that it's going to be even harder the next time. So if we kind of recap a little bit, if that's okay, on what is happening at perimenopause to make weight gain an issue for most women, that will start to make a bit more sense. Do you mind if I do a little reminder? Great. Right. So at perimenopause, we know a minimum of 50% of women are going to gain at least 1.5 kilos for every year of the perimenopause. And on average, that's what, 6 to 10 years for most women. So we see that average weight gain over the perimenopause being about 10 kilos. Wow. And ladies, this will be familiar to you, because for the vast majority, the weight that will be gained will all be around that trunk area, that central area. So that means your bra doesn't fit, but also your jeans don't fit, your blouses don't fit, your jackets don't fit, nothing seems to fit, because it impacts sort of that particular area. So why is that happening? Well, 3 things really, and like I say, I think of it as a perfect storm. Estrogen is reducing, as you know, you'll have heard on just about every lunch and learn, I'm sure, about symptoms. Estrogen is almost responsible for every symptom. Here, it's responsible for changing where your body lays down fat. So previously, women will have that slightly nipped in waist, the hourglass figure that we talk about, that men just don't have in our 20s and 30s. That's because of estrogen. As you lose your estrogen, you start to lay fat down more like a bloke. So you become more straight up and down. That estrogen is not making you gain the weight, it's controlling where the weight gain goes. But the other bit that really helps, Julie Groves, absolutely, you're not on your own, lots of women will relate to this, but where it also, what also is happening is as you're aging, you're losing muscle tissue, and that speeds up a little bit at perimenopause, and that's the bit that is slowing your metabolism down, making it much, much easier for you to gain weight. So you've got those two elements, and then if you combine those with just feeling a bit rubbish, which so often you do until you sort of spring into action and think, this isn't right, I'm actually going to go and do something about this and talk to an expert. If you're feeling a bit ropey, the likelihood is your diet changes a little bit and you start doing a lot of the things you would normally try to be more careful about, and you get a bit less likely to engage in as much exercise as useful. So bring all of that together and you start seeing this pattern of menopausal weight gain. But if you crash diet, if you yo-yo diet and you lose a lot of weight quickly, you're going to lose a lot more muscle tissue as well, and in the long run this problem will just get worse and worse. So it's where the lifelong bit comes in. Really, really important.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Yes, I think I can see from comments that a lot of people recognize that, understanding that. I'm not sure what I was just about to convert 1.5 kilos to pounds. What's that? 3?
It's about 3.5 pounds. Yeah. So you're talking about 1.5 stones in total for most women,
which is a lot.
It is. And if you are, if you're 5'4", 5'5", that's a dress size. That starts meaning an entire wardrobe doesn't fit anymore.
Do you know, Nigel, stop describing me. That's exactly what I did last week. I was like, when I was dress shopping, and obviously, you mentioning perimenopause, and I'll come back to that. But when I got my dress for the awards, I was like, I thought it was just that Reese were cutting things a little bit tighter these days, but they're not. I just don't think they are. I think it is that. But actually, I don't think my weight's changed that much, but the distribution of it. And you mentioned about perimenopause, and I think that's important because that is a serious, significant change for many of us. But what about those of us that are staring down the barrel of 60? I mean, I'm well beyond menopause now. I'm well and truly post-menopause. But to the same extent, all of my good habits, the opportunity for seeing improvement seem like a lot more work and a lot less reward.
Well, absolutely. I think the reality is there's no escaping it. It gets tougher as you get older. But this again takes us into that thing. I mean, similarly, I'm 55. I am finding it's harder work just to stand still, let alone lose anything. And I don't have those issues of declining estrogen levels. So it is partly in that aging thing, but it's also where I think, again, back to this lifelong approach really comes in, because if you start at perimenopause, or ideally, I'm all now for women starting in their 30s to get ready for perimenopause. That's when really you can even just stop the weight gain happening. But if we haven't done that, if you start making changes at perimenopause, and again, the changes are quite discreet, but as long as they're consistent enough and they keep moving, so you embrace the 3 pillars of exercise, a little bit of strength exercise, but quite regularly. looking at your steps, your daily steps, aiming for that 10,000. But if you're nothing near 10,000, just looking to build it up by a couple of thousand a month and getting used to that. So that, again, it starts to tell your body, wait a minute, she's doing something extra here. You're going to get far more benefit from small, consistent increases than you will from one or two murderous workouts in a HIIT class or at the gym. The other element of exercise is also some restorative exercise, yoga, Pilates, these types of things, because really now you've got to start looking after these muscles and these joints that you're going to use to do the exercise. If you're doing that, and if you're just looking at the elements of your diet that are right under your nose, it's amazing. We've done lots of surveying this year. You know, as you know, we run a back to basics weight management and lifestyle program. It's a 12-week program. And we're always wanting to double check, you know, are we still following the science? Because everything here has to be on an evidence base. When we look at most of the reasons why most people are gaining weight, it isn't because they're eating carbohydrates, or they're not intermittent fasting, or they're not checking their glucose measures every 5 minutes. It's much simpler than that. Most people are not eating enough fruit and veg, they're eating too much fat, they're eating too much sugar, and their portion sizes are too big, they're drinking too much booze, and they're not moving enough. That's the bottom line. So then when we spoke to our members and said, look, you know, what are the biggest things? If I asked you, what do you want to change? What would you say? Exactly the same things. They all come back with saying things like, I'm eating the same as my male partner or my teenage boys, the same sizes as that. I'm relying a lot now on ready meals because I'm just not having the time to cook. I'm not moving as much as I do. I get fed up and I open a bottle of Sauvignon and I'm having a couple of glasses of that. See lots of messages coming in about protein. Yeah, protein's important, but don't boost protein as like some nirvana that's going to help you to weight loss. It's not. When you look at your plate, you've got to have protein, but you want to have about a quarter of your plate with protein, about a quarter of your plate with carbohydrate, bread, potatoes, rice, pastas, cereals, and half your plate fruit, vegetables, or salad. There's other comments coming in about, you know, supplements, magnesium, collagen, all these sorts of things. Look, if you like taking those things, then go for your life. But if you really think those things are going to clean up a less than good diet and exercise regime, I'm afraid you're really burying your head in the sand. And I'm not, you know, this isn't wagging my finger and telling you off. This is the reality. The majority of us that struggle with our weight eat bigger portions than we need. We don't balance our food groups. We drink too much booze and we don't move enough. If you change each of those things gradually and over a lifetime, over a lifelong period, you will never have to diet again.
I'm going to agree with you there, because when you say about the 1.5 kilos, if I be a bit more rational about this, I'm the same weight that I was 23 years ago. It's just, I know, get me. But then again, I've been going to the gym for 42 years. It's just so, you know, sometimes my husband does all of the cooking and he'll go, you can't, because I have to say to him, I need to be doing this. Nigel says, and he'll say, you know, if you eat any less, you're going to starve. And it's not true. That's because he looks at, you know, he's a bit of a feeder. He likes to put a healthy diet, a healthy portion in front of me. But some of the things that have worked is, you know, for breakfast, I used to have 2 big slices of toast and lots of scrambled egg, swimming in tomato ketchup. Mm-hmm. Describes a lot about my life. But we've moved to one now. We moved to smaller plates. So I have 1 slice of bread, scrambled egg, and I have brown sauce because I can't eat anywhere near as much brown sauce as I can tomato sauce. And so those sorts of little tricks. And now I was no less hungry. So clearly I was having too much before. But actually it's one of those things that I think, if I follow that concept through, because you're right, when you're sitting with somebody else, you tend to eat the same portions, or my husband will often put the same down for me as to him, or he'll say, oh, actually, sometimes I'll say, I'm not giving you as much. Do you want some more? And I'll say, I'm fine. I'm not a 6-foot bloke. So those sorts of things, when you take a step back and say, actually, logically, that makes sense. I don't need as many calories as him. But that little trick about moving to the plate, I don't feel dissatisfied. If I had a normal size plate, I'd probably look at it and think, I'm on half portions here. Why is that?
Deborah, you're so right. And I think another thing that's really useful, another technique just to try it, and again, not rocket science. This isn't, well, actually, let's take a step back again. We are looking to save 300 or 400 calories a day, plus an increase in activity in trying to lose about half a pound a week, if that's what you're trying to do. That is safe, maintainable weight loss. If you want to lose more than that, then you go on some of the gimmicky quick fixes. But I promise you, you'll be back here again next year wondering, how do I do this properly? So, okay, what I would suggest is we start thinking about the whole process of your meal. So when you eat, we've given you that sign, that portion breakdown, quarter of protein, quarter of carbs, half fruit and veg. Now, put that on a plate that would essentially, the amount of food would fit into your cupped hands. That's about the amount of food somebody needs to feel satisfied. Now, sit at a table and concentrate on what you're doing. No phone, no TV, no devices. Eat slowly. Be the last person to finish. There's a really good reason for doing that. Satiety, the feeling of being satisfied, is a delayed reaction. Human beings are programmed to gorge. We were hunter-gatherers. If you eat quickly, you will always eat more than you need. So slow it right down, and then you'll start to notice, actually, that smaller portion is enough, just as you experienced there. Combine that with a few extra 1,000 steps, 2 or 3 extra 1,000 steps a day on top of what you're doing, 2 or 3 sessions of strength or resistance exercise, plus some restorative exercise. And I guarantee you, if you do that over this next year, you can expect to see about 10 pounds off. But there's the key. Next year. This isn't something you're going to do, and have it ready next week. And that's what we always think of when we want a diet, don't we? We think, oh my God, the hen-picked awards dinner are coming up next week. Pass me my Spanx. I can't get into my dress.
Were you looking up my dress, Nigel?
I tell you what, you looked fabulous. But the issue here is, I think it is. This is why I love working in menopause, because I do think at the heart of it, most women are fed up with the nonsense and the quick fixes, and actually are ready to start looking and thinking, gosh, let me just find a way to feel like I know I'm ticking the nutritional boxes. I'm looking after my bones. I'm looking after my heart. I'm doing all the things that are going to help me stop, raising my insulin sensitivity and all these kinds of things. And that puts me in charge of my weight. And often what I'll say is, look, this is your opportunity. If menopause brings you something wonderful, it is the chance to step back and say, enough. I am going to start taking care of myself a little bit. And that includes diet, exercise, and self-care. Lots of people are asking things about intermittent fasting. And I just, again, would like to just mention a couple of things on that, if I can. Look, fasting, if it works for you and you love doing it, I'm not going to persuade you not to do it. But don't kid yourself. You are doing something that is magically scientific. You're saving calories. That's it. When we look at every piece of clinical evidence, all of the studies show that that is no more effective than what I'm suggesting you do in terms of long-term weight loss. And so again, I'm not going to say to you, oh, you must stop doing it. It's not dangerous. I think it's blinking horrible and a miserable way to live. But if you're happy doing it, go for it.
And you know, Nigel, and when I say I want my cake and eat it, I don't mean the actual cake. Sometimes I do, but it is that I want to feel at my best for life. But I don't want to feel. There's just too much going on, or maybe it's the life stage I'm at that I don't want to do this if it's just horrible to do. You know, why should it feel like a chore to do this? You know,
I have just seen a lady in clinic this morning, absolutely on her knees, so embedded in 16-hour fasts. She's got her digestive health is all over the place. She's got iron deficiency anemia because she's going for long periods without eating anything. She's utterly screwed up about food, and her digestive system is in a mess. Again, it really doesn't need to be that complicated. And it breaks my heart to see women feeling as if they have to follow something so prescriptive and so restrictive that actually, you know, if we think about the first principle of eating well, the first principle is enjoy your food. I don't know about you. I just would not be able to function if I hadn't eaten for 16 hours.
No, absolutely. Well, let's go to questions and see, because I can see so many comments coming up there. Sally, thank you.
Yeah, I think there's some, again, as always on these calls, there's some amazingly wonderful sharing, which is always really appreciated, and people being really supportive of each other, which we know always happens on these calls. And there was just a lovely comment, Nigel, for you from somebody who had been on a session before and had found it really inspiring. And I did feel very inspired after watching Nigel recently, how bulking up dinners with veg, and went back to the gym for the first time in about 4 years for some weight training. Thank you. So just thought that was a lovely piece. So one of the questions people have got is they completely get the kind of the snacking or turning to food when we're feeling tired or upset or emotional and things like that. Ideas for snack ideas that might give that kind of mood boost that people are often looking for.
Brilliant question. Yeah, always think about a snack. Ideally, you want it to be 100 to 150 calories, but don't get into counting calories. That's miserable. You want it from 2 food groups. So maybe something like a little baby Bell cheese with 2 oatcakes, or a tablespoon of hummus with a couple of oatcakes, peanut butter on Ryvita, maybe some cherry tomatoes with a little piece of a slice of ham. Again, not fancy foods, just really straightforward things. So carb and veg, protein and carb, mix those things up, nutrient dense. So think about things like crisps, biscuits, chocolate. They're treats, they're indulgences. They are not nutrient dense snacks. A snack is a pit stop. It's that top up between lunch and dinner, or breakfast and lunch, that is going to mean you go into that next meal feeling hungry, not ravenous, so that you can eat slowly until you're satisfied, not stuffed. Malt loaf, also a little bit of sweet, sticky malt loaf. The sweetness comes from the dried fruit, no extra sugars, no fat in there. Really a lovely little snack to have.
Fantastic. We definitely have a lot of questions still around intermittent fasting and fasting in general. Just people are quite confused that they've read a lot of things around it helping with things like digestion, metabolism, things like that. Are there any times where certain types of fasting would be helpful, or I guess it's just really understanding a bit more?
Absolutely.
I think people get very confused because I think there are massive extremes to some gentle changes.
Sure. I mean, again, if we think about your digestive health, yeah, some of the studies do show that if you're on a fasting plan, there seems to be a benefit to digestion, things like IBS. But usually the people that have taken followed those plans have also been on quite a controlled diet where they're eating more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, taking more water. Well, we have known for years those things actually support digestive health. So we really don't have the studies to show us that the fasting is the thing that does any good. We've got to remember the diet industry is an industry. It's an industry that sucks you in, takes your money, and keeps you trapped within it. It is always looking for a new trend. It's almost like hemlines and handbags. The fashions go around. Intermittent fasting is not anything new. People were doing different types of diets that were fasting in the 1940s and 50s. This is just coming around again. As I say, listen, if you love it and it really seems to be suiting you well, fine, but don't beat yourself up because you're not fasting. You do not need to.
Fantastic. That's really helpful. Someone's asked around the movement piece. There's a couple of questions. One person who struggles with a physical disability, and so they're finding obviously physical activity quite hard. Additional tips that they can do to maybe boost any weight gain and things like that they can do that might help support them if they can't be more physically active.
A little plug, if you don't mind. We did a series of chair or yoga for anybody, and it was specifically designed for people who do have mobility issues that will really just help you start to make the process to get in to exercise. What I would always say is find yourself an online instructor who is really experienced, not a piece of fluff that whoops and screams every time she does the splits. You want somebody who actually understands what they're doing with an older body or a body that has some difficulties and can design exercise specifically for you. And if I can just say, all of our experts at Harley Street at Home are all menopausal women who have done proper training so that they can see what you're doing and keep you safe. So come and have a try.
Fantastic. And also someone said around the number of steps per day. If somebody can't do that every day, can they kind of do some days where they're more physically active, or is it about the consistency of daily? Does it matter over the week?
Any increase you can do is a benefit. What's brilliant on your iPhone or any of the phones, the smartphones, if you've got that little heart sign there, that's counting your steps all the time if your phone is with you. What I love with it is you can see what you've done in a day, you can see what you've done in a week, a month, a year. What you want to see is your average increasing. So yeah, I mean, it's not the best way. Ideally, we all want to be doing 10,000 steps every day. If you have a really sedentary day and you make up for it a bit the next day, that's absolutely great.
Fantastic. Thank you both. And there's some wonderful sharing and supporting and resource sharing. So really appreciate that from everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Nigel. We've run out of time. I mean, it just went like a blink of an eye. And thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you, Sally, for keeping an eye on the chat. I have to say, I agree with you. Some amazing cheering people on going on there, and some great ideas. So I hope you join us again, Nigel. I'll be on I did get your newsletter about your next program that you're offering.
Yeah.
Is that when I'm sorry, I should you probably say, go and read your newsletter, Deborah. When does it start?
We're on October the 2nd, back to basics. If you just jump over to harleystreetathome.com, you just have a look on the events page, on the landing page, and you'll find all the information there.
Thank you. Somebody shared your website, and when we write up the notes from this webinar, then we'll include it in there. So I shall see you at the beginning of October then.
Can't wait. Lovely to see you both. Thanks so much
Fantastic.
for having me, and thank you everyone for your comments.
Thank you very much.